Rockwell Automation, we make all these things possible. For all of life's moments, milestones, and celebrations, we are there.
Well, 2020 was the year of disruption when we talk of COVID-19, when we talk of disruptions across industries, across the globe, whether it was the pharmaceutical industry or any other. There were disruptions as far as supply chain is concerned, manufacturing is concerned. However, it was also a year when the industry came up with newer solutions. It accelerated research, it shortened timelines for newer products to come to the market, and also managed its way around the supply chain hurdles so as to be better prepared for any next disruptions. Now, to understand how certain companies managed it at their end and to look at the digital transformation of the industry, today I have with me Mr. Sushil Suri, Chairman and MD of Morphin Labs, and Dilip Savni, MD at Rockwell Automation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here for this special panel discussion. Let me come to you, Mr. Suri, first. 2020 was certainly a year that, no one will ever forget, especially, if you were in the pharmaceutical industry with the kind of disruptions that we saw across supply chain, across manufacturing. Your company also launched a range of essential products to stop the spread of COVID-19. You worked on non-contact infrared thermometers, among other products that you brought to the market. What kind of disruptions did you see in the manufacturing side of your business, production, and how did the company manage to get over the disruptions, and what were the solutions that you deployed?
Thank you, Archana. I think you very well defined 2020 was a challenge, but I would say every challenge has got an opportunity. So that was the starting point of 2020. Almost, I think in the beginning, only in January, February, when it started all in China, Wuhan, we had a lot of import from China. So we were basically tracking on a daily basis what's happening there. So we were clear that okay, something is going to happen here also. And we were mentally or internally preparing ourselves that someday if lockdown comes in India, because lockdown was happening in China every next day. So we prepared our internal team that in case there is a lockdown, the first thing was work from home. I mean, we started in March, but we were physically preparing for it from February onward. So I think around 10th March, when the flight restrictions started, on 20th March, the whole full Janta curfew was there. So between that, I think we from 15th, 16th March only, we started shifting guys back home. And we started putting their computer home and online banking, whatever was required. So I think that the first phase physically moved people out of office, but that was only the first step. Second was how do we connect to them? How do we reach them? How do we monitor them? And the banking was a big issue. We had physical banking, shifting to online banking, signatures, approvals. And of course, the IT was not prepared with so much of security controls and the data management. So overnight, people were, I would say, very aggressive. We were able to place people, and we never thought a typical old-style pharma manufacturing company would be working from home. So I would say that was a good start, and that's I would say, the enterprise of India, and that's the enterprise of digital readiness we had. Even during the full curfew, full lockdown, we had got curfew passes. Our shipments from custom departments was released. Those are going to the factories. Factory was working, except for one day on that Janta curfew, or one of the days. We were working whole of the lockdown period. And we are proud to say the team had done unbelievable job and amazing, I would say, synergy among the team. Even the R&D guys sitting in their hometowns or sitting in their homes, they have been conducting experiments which are being done in the plant. QC guys are doing testing and testing at the labs, and the bosses are sitting in the offices or they're sitting in the homes, and everything was managed very well. But all, I would say, thanks to technology, thanks to the Zoom calls, thanks to Microsoft Teams, Cisco, everybody has learned everything. And no surprises, now half of the travel has been cut already, except for the medical representative visiting the doctors. That's the bare minimum. Doctor still expects that. So other than that, I would say 60 to 70% of the travel has gone, and it has, I would say, maybe it has gone permanently. We have a big portion of business into diagnostic devices. So this is where we have seen a major revolution, like we saw the revolution of mobile devices, mobile phones. So when we were selling BP monitors and glucometers, we were actually had to convince everybody to buy a BP monitor or a glucometer. So glucometer sales have been growing quarter to quarter by almost 100%. And we had serious challenges of production of glucometers because, like you said, supply disruptions were there and cargo was not coming up, shipments were not arriving in time. We had limitation to increase the manpower. There was so much testing norms about COVID and then testing the people. I mean, all the restriction done, but still we grew 100% quarter to quarter on the glucometers.
Yeah, Mr. Suri, you know what? I actually wanted to ask you that. We've seen that actually 2020 brought diagnostics at the hands of the people, at the hands of the patients. They have been monitoring themselves and approaching the doctor. Telemedicine has become a reality, and products that the companies like yours make have become part of day-to-day lives of people. But is it going to be this way? What is your assessment? Do you think this is going to be a long-term thing, or once we are out of this pandemic phase, once vaccination goes on, people will be back to the normal cycle? What is your assessment? Do you see diagnostics still to be at the hands of the people?
Certainly at this stage we feel that okay, this is a temporary thing, but like I said, that maybe to an extent these things will become permanent, because once you start checking your glucometer, you start checking your sugar at home, then you know that you can check it, you don't need to go to a doctor. And once you know that you can check BP at home, then you don't need to visit a doctor. And second thing, for example, something like oximeter. Nobody heard oximeter. This was a small device we were having since last 5 years. We were not even selling 1,000 oximeters in a year. Now we want 10 meters in a month. We can't produce. We don't have a capacity. So that's what is happening. Digital thermometer, of course, I can understand it may be temporary, because now every hotel, hospital, shop, clinic, everybody is checking thermometer. That may go away. But as far as self-care devices is concerned, and you use the right word, that now the patient is using in his own hand. That's what our brand is. Dr. Karpan says, health in your hands.
Before I get Mr. Sawhney into the conversation, I'll just very briefly take a comment, one more follow-up comment from you. You spoke about disruptions in manufacturing. You spoke about disruptions also in the supply and sales initially, and disruption in production. What part of the production of oximeters and all of this is happening in India, with the components and raw materials from India? How much of localization is there? And are we self-reliant there? Everyone's been talking about Make in India, but has this period helped us move in that direction? What is your experience? Very briefly. Yeah.
So I would say we are on track. And like I said, we are the only company in the country who is manufacturing all these devices in India. We got a manufacturing setup. We have 100% production of glucometers, BP monitors. Of course, we had to start last year. We couldn't start because of labor shortages. This year will come up. Oximeters we are doing, stethoscopes we are doing. So these are all falling under the campaign of Make in India. Now the question is, Make in India, is it fully Make in India? The answer is no. We do not have the backup. We do not have the components. The components are still being imported. And there are laws wherein we are restricted in whether we can import this or not import this. But as we go forward, and as the government is supporting all these initiatives, more and more things will be manufactured in India. And more, I would say, supply chain would come up. And you might have noticed that government is giving incentive of that production link scheme, PLI scheme. So PLI is there available for production link for the API also, and this diagnostics also, even for the electronics also, mobile phones also. So that is where the backup would come. We are at least 2 to 3 years away to become fully reliant, but at least we have started the process.
Mr. Sauni, coming on this point, I wanted to take a comment from you exactly on this, and that is why I took a follow-up question with Mr. Suri. We are talking about resilient supply chains. The government is talking about Make in India. There is a PLI schemes. In your sense, where does the country stand as far as building this resilient supply chain for manufacturing of pharmaceutical and medical devices is concerned? And in your sense, what role can automation play in here? In kind of reducing the risk of disruptions, similar to what we've seen in the last year.
So, it's a very, very topical question that you touched upon, Ajna. And first of all, I completely agree with the point of view that Mr. Suri has laid out. Right. The short answer is I think we are getting better, and the kind of acceleration that that we've had the opportunity to witness the industry go in terms of its maturity to be more reliant. That's been quite awesome. COVID and this pandemic, it brings the broad connotation. I mean, when was the last time? A year ago, no one would have even thought that in a matter of 10 to 12 months, we're going to be having so many different viable vaccine candidates, right? It's you yourself just came back from the vaccination camps and so forth. These things are getting accelerated because technology is bringing about game-changing advances and maturity, right? Life sciences pharmaceuticals it's always, let's recognize, it's been a regulated industry, and being regulated, it's tough for the industry to move at the pace that other industries are able to move. But when you bring in these digital technologies and automation, right? Even a regulated industry, can imagine moving at a pace that was up until now, not even practically feasible. And India is pharmacy to the world, right? And it is very important, not just for the state of the Indian life sciences industry, but it is having, a critical impact on the global life sciences pharmaceutical. Technologies are allowing you to imagine things, which are having impact both on the quality side of the operations as well as on the process side of the operations, yield improvements, reliability improvements, and all of that, right? Let's imagine that, you've certainly got a set of operators, who are not fully trained, and you have operators, who are trained but available in a different city, right? Now, how do you transfer knowledge from people who have that, in their minds, right? How do you institutionalize that, and how do you actually, make it available so that people who have less experience in operating those equipments be able to confidently operate those equipments, right? So using augmented reality, using decision support, using sometimes even things like digital twins, we've been able to actually accelerate the learnings, of operators so that their confidence of operating the assets, goes through a step change. One thing which I can talk about, which probably is the most powerful notion, is the power of advanced analytics, right? You're suddenly able to have vast amounts of data, which were always available, but to be able to bring them on a common platform and to apply deep learning, to apply machine learning to bring out insights which are never really available to you, right? Which tell you about when your process is likely to go out of spec, right? It's just giving, it's empowering the line side operators, plant supervisors in a manner in which they've never been in the past, right? So I would say, my submission to you is, COVID has really meant digital, and this change that the industry has seen, I don't need to, I'll be preaching to the choir, but, this has been an irreversible change.
Absolutely. You touched upon, what was supposed to be my next question for you was on AI, in fact, advanced analytics, AI, and blockchain and data that everybody's talking about. You kind of briefly touched upon it, but I just want to understand one aspect from you on this. How close are we, or how real is the situation when we say that advanced analytics is actually driving supply chains? Is it actually driving production, or is it still in the nascent stage and needs some more time to actually developed to its full capabilities? Where are we as far as using these AI data and these analytics to deal with the disruptions in supply chain, in production, etc., and make it more seamless?
Let me instead give you a couple of examples, right? So you'll know how real it is, right? So this is no longer in the realm of white papers being written or some research work being done, right? We are already, right? We're using AI to detect production anomalies, right? And to give advanced warnings and alerts to operators and workers, so they can actually, investigate. You draw their attention to something which requires their attention, right? Why? Because machine learning is working and it picks up those anomalies as opposed to the operator staying glued to a screen to watch when the process is going out of spec. Just a simple example. We are already integrating AI into process control equipments, and it's in form factors which integrates very, very easily into plant control systems, right? So what it does basically is you're nesting this capability in existing process control systems so that you can maintain a continuous watch or a continuous monitoring, identifying challenges as they arrive or as they are about to arrive, because you're talking about predictive capabilities, right? System is self-learning, right? So you don't need to teach these algorithms because they learn by themselves, right? So that's making it a lot more easier for manufacturing engineers to integrate these into the just a handful of years ago, if you're using AI and ML, you had to necessarily think of having data scientists on staff, right? But by making sure that we are able to take this tech and embed it in a form factor that sits in existing process control systems, you actually don't need to have data scientists for a vast number of commonly used use cases, right?
Absolutely not science fiction. I just needed to understand how deeper has it penetrated, and you actually brought that up pretty nicely with examples. Mr. Suri, from the new advancement, the technological advancements that we're talking about, from AI to to data to blockchains. Has your company also, used some of the newer elements of technological advancements, and what has been the learnings in the last 1 year as far as moving ahead on technology is concerned?
I think the first learning, as I told earlier, is that the first learning is that okay, we have to be digital, and we should not be hesitant. We should step in, and actually the company stepped in. Now, as a part of the proposal, there were certain things which the company was already working upon, which have been, I would say, fast-tracked. For example, PPC, production planning and control, inventory management, logistics, this is all one package. This was earlier all being done manually. So now we are trying to get high-end software with AI included and with all the, I would say, like Ms. Sani selling all alerts included. So people have to get used to it. They have to board this bus. There's no choice now. So similarly, when talking of CRM with around 800 customers spread over 80 countries, so naturally all the eventualities of 80 countries and all the flights and cargoes and disruptions to be included. So again, we can't do it manually. So this has to be learned by the machine, and naturally we are integrating that. And I think the third important thing which has come now post-COVID is the man management, or I would say the people management, to a large extent even the time management. The new I won't say issue or a challenge. I think even the emotions management, so-called mental health, these are the issues which are the new challenges which have come. So work environment and work culture is a big issue now. So that is again where started the process of having intelligent HR software, wherein we can integrate the talent, we can integrate the development, mental health. And of course, before we started the program, we were chatting, we are shifting a new office in Gurgaon. The whole objective is to have a broader culture, more openness, because we have seen that, of course, it's nice that people have been working home, but certainly everybody has developed certain level of, I would say, not frustration, but certain level of, I would say, boredom. So people need more interaction. Now we are okay to do everything digital, but certainly we still need to meet, we need to interact. How do we have innovative method? So on all the three fronts, on the customer front, production and inventory management front, and more so on the people front, we are going to use more and more software and more intelligent, I would say, all the technical jargon which Mr. Sani is explaining.
All right. All right. Mr. Suri, I agree, but for a lot of us, it is jargon when people talk about analytical science and, blockchain.
For us,
R&D is one aspect I wanted to take a view from both of you. How much of digital transformation have we seen on the R&D ecosystem forefront? Mr. Sauni, if you can briefly highlight that, and then I'll go to Mr. Suri to understand the need to set up an ecosystem. Where do we stand, Mr. Sauni, as far as digitalization for the R&D ecosystem is concerned?
Let me answer it in the following manner, Archana. So today you have, and you're going to blame me for using more jargon here, and I'm trying not to. But I would like you to imagine. We talk about digital transformation. Think of it as there being a digital thread that runs all the way from your product design right down to your manufacturing onto your supply chain, right? And there is a digital thread that already is running in the context of life sciences pharmaceuticals, right from the drug discovery stages, right? So, it actually allows you to have all of your, let's call it the PLM side, where you're actually working on the design, and the drug discovery stages, right? And as you take it, to your labs and then onto your manufacturing, you have one common thread that runs. That means, it is possible right now for you to have, your engineering data, mashed up with your real-time, production data, and run scenarios which allow you to couple these two and have implementations which are, kind of like digital twins that allow you to simulate things, right? I'm seeing the concept of digital thread actually make itself very, very relevant to the life sciences pharmaceutical industries. But I'll be very interested in your point of view, Mr. Suri, as well.
Yes, Mr. Suri, how do you look at this R&D ecosystem and digitalization?
Ecosystem, I would say two ways. One, of course, is the basic infrastructure, whether we are talking of Make in India program or I would say in general. So we sadly are very much behind the basic infrastructure. So whether it is question of, I would say, the complete ecosystem when we talk, but I think on the digital front per se, I think the more and more use of data or data analytics, because when we finalize any product, any patent or any, I would say, move for the next 10 years. So we have to virtually, I would say, filter through thousands of molecules and thousands of patents and processes and litigation. So everywhere, certainly these things are being earlier done manually. Now there are smart, intelligent software which are, I would say, getting data through hundreds of different sources, and everything is there on the screens. And of course, these are a bit costlier than usual. So our teams are using all the latest equipments and devices. And of course, then finally, like Mr. Sani said, that when we go to the table, then we do not have to do all the experiments on their own. Many of these experiments are run on the computer. And I think the big success which everybody is noticing is on the vaccine. Everybody doubts that how can you make a vaccine in 6 months? How can you create a vaccine in 3 months? Actually, there are data, there are systems available in the data, and they are just running computer programs. And if this vaccine works for this, how will it work for this? So the only thing they have to do is actual experiment. Rest of the modeling is done by the computers. So we are bang on. And as AI is coming, I think this is a big boom for the industry.
We've spoken about disruptions. We've spoken about also the way out. There have been certain government programs like the PLI scheme that you highlighted. There have been certain other government programs on Make in India for R&D, etc. But in your sense, currently where we stand right now, whether we look at pharmaceuticals, medical devices, or overall life sciences as a sector, what are some of the pain points that needs to be addressed for us to take that leap and become self-reliant, for us to take that leap and become, a more robust supplier of medicines and devices to the world? What, in your sense, are some of the pain points that need to be addressed?
I won't call it pain point, but I would say there are certain improvement what we need to take. The biggest one, if I say one word is backward integration and the infrastructure. So we have been working on the, I would say, very thin shoe because India is very strong in terms of finished dosages. We are the number one in drug master files. We have the largest number of ANDAs outside US. So of course, other than US, India is the largest producer. We are very good in making finished dosages. But unfortunately, we are very weak. I won't say weak. I mean, we are not very strong in making of APIs. Any more API also, we need intermediates. We need drug intermediates. We need the key starting raw material, which they say KSM. So that is where India is lacking. That is what we import from China. Even today, we have 70-80% import from China. And that's what China does it better. Now, if we want to replicate that, we need huge factories, huge infrastructure. For example, 30% of the top 100 products are biotechnology. So we do not have the alphabets of biotechnology still in India. We have one or two companies. I mean, we need to set up large facilities. So if we want penicillin G in India, which we were producing earlier by government sector, IDPL, HL were doing, they closed 20 years ago. If we want to redo, we have to have the facilities of that level. Now, I'm not saying government has to do it, private sector would do it, but for private sector to do it, private sector needs support. It's only not the financial support, it's only a moral support.
Mr. Suri, the ease of doing business that the government talks about, that hasn't replicated as much on ground as much as on paper is what you're saying. That still needs to be ironed out. Government on its part somewhere says, that it's the industry that doesn't come forward to that extent as much and does not invest as much in R&D particularly as we would require. How do we balance that in your assessment, sir?
So I think ease of doing business is happening, but like I said, there is no synchronization. One department says ease of doing business, second department comes and they add another 20 guidelines, SEBI comes, they add another 50 guidelines, then ROC comes, they into another 50 compliances, then GST comes, they add another 100 compliances. So there's not ease of doing business. So business is becoming more and more complicated, particularly for the larger sector. The compliance sector has become so complicated, so much big paperwork. So there's no more ease. We are making things more and more complicated. The general understanding of the government and all the bureaucrats sitting with all the experiences, the general understanding is that industry is not in the favor of the country. You can't, I mean, industry hai to galat hai, there is something wrong. I think that's where the attitude is an issue. In case the government has favorable, I would say, blessings on the industry can grow very comfortably. I don't think there's an issue. The only issue what we see is a perennial issue is the capital. In India, we do not have capital. We do not have a large capital. Our banks do not give loans for more than 10 years, door to door. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to set up a factory.
Mr. Sawhney, I'll give you the last word on the panel. We spoke about a lot of newer elements to talk about. We also spoke about, technological advancements. Mr. Suri also highlighted some of the issues that still needs to be ironed out for us to, take that leap forward. But the biggest thing that is on the minds of every industry which is operating right now is risk mitigation. How do we manage that at a time when disruptions are happening? How do we manage risk mitigation? What the kind of decisions companies should take when we are talking about risk mitigation, and where does technology come in on that? I think that would be a very good point to also wrap up the conversation and take a forward-looking stance on how should companies look at risk management, especially at a time of disruption.
I believe that how much the industry is able to exploit the power of digital is directly dependent on how the industry deals with the threats of cybersecurity. We've seen here, right in the Indian context, with leading Indian pharmaceutical companies having cybersecurity incidents, right? And some pretty major ones in the recent months, right? And we are by no stretch of imagination, neither the life sciences industry nor India, as a country, there are, millions of such incidents that are happening, and we've all read about them, here in India, in countries like US and so forth, right? It's just as simple as that. How effectively are you able to implement, the digital transformation programs is directly proportionate to how well are you able to manage the risks arising out of cybersecurity threats, right? Once our experience and business leaders would want to go back to the false sense of security of physical isolation. My plant, if it is physically isolated, cut from everything else, should be okay. It's no longer an option, as we've discussed, through the last several minutes. There's an explosion of devices and sensors and connectivity across the entire enterprise. Some of the plants have legacy equipments that do not have a very well thought of, access strategy, right? In short, there are a very vast array of access points, right? Which make it very easy for the people who are trying to get who have malicious intent to try and get into your systems and to disrupt your enterprise, right? There is increasingly a lot of help that is available. There are structured approaches that are being put out. There is some very simple ideas. One that has been always good hygiene is defense in depth. Having layers that give you good protection, right? And variety of other things. Increasingly, physical security. What the pandemic has taught us is, you need to have the ability to monitor, movement of people, right? While we are all becoming very confident now that the news of vaccination is just around the corner and so forth for masses at large, but let's just not forget the fact that there are still parts of the country that are seeing uptick in the number of cases. It is important to really implement the basic hygiene, social distancing, etc., etc. And you can, through the same digital technologies, actually enforce all of these things inside of factories, inside of office facilities and so forth. So I would just leave it at this, Archana. Having a sound risk assessment around your digital technologies, and then an appropriate mitigation plan is basic hygiene now and going into future.
You summed up the entire panel, because the topic of the panel is preparing for a virtual future, and we can only have a secure virtual, a strong virtual future if we have it secure, and hence cybersecurity becomes top priority along with physical security that COVID-19 has taught us. Well, gentlemen, Mr. Suri, Mr. Sauni, thank you so much for bringing in your ideas, whether we are talking about AI and blockchains in manufacturing, whether we are talking about digitalization of the entire process of manufacturing and sale of products, and how companies have been managing it since the pandemic, and even now, and what lies ahead. What are the pain points? What are the issues that the pharma and life sciences industry is still facing that needs to be ironed out? Mr. Suri, Mr. Sauni, thank you so much for sparing time, being here on this virtual platform with CNBC TV 18 and Moneycontrol, and this program, Make in India, Pharmacy of the World. Many thanks.
Hello to all. I am Nitin Velankar, working as Head Engineering in Invensha Healthcare Limited. We are well-known oral solid dosage pharma manufacturing company supplying products across the globe in a highly regulated market. Coming to automation, yes, automation definitely helps us in our manufacturing processes by virtue of providing or improving consistency, reliability, and control over various process parameters. It ensures better product quality due to continuous process parameter control and monitoring. It also helps us to ensure that process, product, and personal safety are enhanced due to early warnings, indications, and alarms. Most importantly, being a pharma company, data and documents are very sacred to us. It helps us in ensuring non-editable data, records, trends so that our processes can be controlled or demonstrated to our regulatory authorities. Very recently, we have upgraded our HVAC control systems. Around 80 plus air handling units we have upgraded via Rockwell automation and their system integrated Messrs Sierra. And our own personal experience is such that after the automation and upgradation, it helped us in having precise control over key parameter of HVAC, followed by early indication and alarms to act faster and quicker, and most importantly, the data and the trend generated throughout these 80 systems are now a documentary proof and evidence to one and all. Finally, automation in pharma industry helps not only to the manufacturer, it helps to provide a solid support in terms of audit and regulatory compliance, and finally it gives peace of mind to one and all, including the final user and patients. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today to discuss the state of Pharma 4.0. I'm Sachin Misra, a principal and global director leading the pharmaceuticals industry segment at Calypso, a wholly owned subsidiary of Rockwell Automation. I've served the life sciences industry for a little over 20 years and will share some of my experience in driving the adoption of Pharma 4.0. Pharma 4.0 principles can be applied to any segment of the pharmaceuticals industry, from small molecule pharmaceuticals to biotech, personalized medicines, and combination products that include drug delivery devices. The smart factory, the factory of the future, the industrial Internet of Things, and Industry 4.0, these are buzzwords that populate a new manufacturing world triggered by digitalization efforts. Pharma 4.0 is a holistic operating model for pharmaceutical facilities and supply chains of the future based on Industry 4.0 capabilities, digital maturity, and data integrity by design. In short, Pharma 4.0 is the digitalized operation model of a pharmaceutical organization. Implementing new Industry 4.0 based manufacturing concepts in Pharma 4.0 requires a realignment of expectations, interpretation, and definition within the pharmaceutical regulations, including ICH. While Pharma 4.0 has been called a new industrial revolution, its implementation will more likely resemble an evolution in which digitalization and automation meet very complex product portfolios and life cycles. It is therefore important to achieve an accepted understanding of the readiness and maturity, starting with additional digital enablers and elements added to the ICH Q10, or the pharmaceutical quality system, along the product life cycle. It is also important to develop business cases to showcase which Industry 4.0 automation and digitalization technologies can be applied to pharma and which implications the pharma industry faces due to the increasingly complex regulatory challenges in the pharma and biotech industry. Digitalization, an important concept and component of Pharma 4.0, promises to connect everything, creating new levels of transparency and adaptivity for a digitalized plant floor. This will enable faster decision-making and provide inline and real-time control over business, operations, and quality. It will also require higher levels of security since connected systems heighten vulnerability. Over the past few decades, there has been a significant portfolio shift to biologic therapeutics, requiring pharma companies to organically build new development disciplines and manufacturing capabilities. Almost all have leveraged process development and manufacturing capabilities with CDMO partners, or have built out their global networks and centers of excellence that specialize in specific aspects of drug product realization, from intermediates manufacturing through bulk drug substance manufacturing, finishing, forming, filling, and packaging. The global and complex nature of these extended and perhaps porous networks necessitate the use of structured data sets and digital threads of data that by their very nature are reusable and leverageable by the entire value chain. In essence, weaving multiple digital threads into a digital fabric of reusable data. Functions and organizations within the pharmaceuticals industry tend to be siloed, and they quite often lack an enterprise digital strategy. And in our experience, very few evolve out of what we call pilot purgatory, or are unable to successfully scale digital initiatives across the enterprise. The new network models need to be porous in terms of digital data flow while ensuring security and extending it beyond the four walls. The data elements, relationships, and data chains are inherently more complex in pharma due to process control strategies, robust process model development, where critical quality attributes are mapped to critical process parameters across potentially hundreds of process stages and operation steps that must be adjusted for market, facility, line, and equipment variations, resulting in dozens of recipe variations. Complex product materials and process development data, knowledge, and silos of unstructured data really impede efficient knowledge transfer, data reuse, and break a continuous flow of reusable digital data artifacts. Traditionally, most digital transformations have focused on specific use cases within the organizational or functional silos due to the perceived complexity and organizational barriers to implementing a pervasive digital thread across the product innovation, commercialization, and manufacturing asset data chains. The value of establishing a digital thread-centric strategy increases the connectivity between all of those processes, systems, equipments, and product, including the people, to create or enable a digital fabric versus traditional methods that may only connect pieces of those data elements. What we have tried to do at Calypso is really define the entire digital thread from molecule discovery all the way into post-market surveillance and pharmacovigilance. Underneath, what we have established are the core digital functions that can be adopted to enable Pharma 4.0 across the enterprise. The journey for each pharmaceutical company will be different, but establishing the common digital data elements that can be reused and leveraged is a good starting point. So when we look at the key pillars for digital transformation in the pharmaceuticals industry, we have really categorized that into 8 key areas. And it starts with what we call connected development. This is the ability to, during the preclinical material development process, extending all the way into commercial drug substance development, digitizing the product development and the materials development processes. This core foundational digital data can drive the rest of the pillars and really enable Pharma 4.0 across the enterprise. So when we look at some of the other key pillars, we look at resource optimization, where the digital data artifacts collected from development can drive the optimization of not only human assets, but also physical equipment assets, and align the capacity of that facility or that line or equipment to the market strategy that has been put in place. And extending from that, the same digital data set can be leveraged by simulation and emulation mechanisms where the entire process model can be simulated to ensure that the process model that's been developed has the right levels of efficacy, quality, and safety aligned to the critical quality attributes that they then align to the critical process parameters from a manufacturing point of view. Extending that to the process control optimization pillar, we can employ machine learning algorithms to really optimize the process control and production rate of the equipment that's used in the line, including the adoption of machine learning driven soft sensor principles. Deploying soft sensors can add a lot of value to processes in the sense that they can avoid disruptive measurements in process and calculate values that would traditionally require the process to be interrupted by the operator and a physical measurement will be taken. So a soft sensor can compute at the edge real time what a temperature value or a moisture content value would be by extrapolating existing hardware sensors such as inlet temperature, exhaust temperature, fan RPMs to calculate the optimal moisture content. Moving to the next pillar, when we look at digital performance management, this is really focused on measuring the productivity rate of the equipment and the line and employing lean production management techniques to ensure that maximum utilization and capacity is received from the machine. The next pillar would be around asset performance management, where we use industrial AI to detect and predict faults in facility assets. And this could reduce downtime and repair time, which could effectively disrupt a production process. The next pillar is around energy management and sustainability, where we can measure the throughput and usage of the assets from an energy usage perspective and really align that to sustainability goals through connected energy operations and smart facilities that really drive the product innovation process. The last pillar is augmented operations, where we can provide the operators with critical data and decision support during manufacturing. An example would be line clearance, where an operator, as they're disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling the equipment, could be given guided prompts in terms of the SOPs and work instructions that need to be followed. An example of a Pharma 4.0 factory extends all the way from development all the way into the shipment of those products. What I've highlighted here is how all of these various functions come together and leverage data artifacts that are created by other applications that can be readily leveraged and repurposed to drive downstream applications and functions. So what do we need to think about when we look at the capabilities and enabling factors for Pharma 4.0 realization? We have divided that once again into 8 key areas where all of the digital elements that have been defined here come together to drive Pharma 4.0, all the way from integrated commercialization, where structured data sets that are developed during development can accelerate tech transfer, to smart quality and regulatory, where you can pivot to review by exception because of the availability of both product and process definition data converged with electronic batch records. Adaptive manufacturing, where you can reconfigure the plant floor to change over to a new product very quickly, and drive dynamic real-time scheduling based upon the available capacity of the equipment or line. To augmented operations, where we discussed earlier, using AR and VR mechanisms to provide decision support at the operator level. And then the next layer of that is really data-driven supply planning and sourcing, where if a foundational layer of process and materials development is in place, all of that data can be communicated not only to internal manufacturing systems, but also to CDMOs to ensure that they have the right supplies and the right available manufacturing capacity to fulfill the demand that's placed on them. And of course, there are 3 other areas that are not necessarily digital technologies, but pause, restart, but also governance activities that ensure that adoption of those digital technologies is rapidly put in place. So one of that would be data governance, to ensure that the data that's being created and reused and harvested has the right level of governance around it, to make sure that the right referential, relational, and contextualization of that data happens across the enterprise. There are core technologies that enable Pharma 4.0, all the way from IoT and edge computing to system interoperability. This is a key aspect of Pharma 4.0, where the right technologies with the right levels of integrations need to be put in place to realize Pharma 4.0. And of course, last but not least, are the people and culture that need to align to these new methods of manufacturing and process control. So let's take a look at an example. This is a real life case study where the client wanted to actually detect any shifts in critical process parameters. So if you kind of follow the process, the first step of that process was to ensure that any new assets and devices that were added to the manufacturing line had the appropriate level of sensorization that provided a data stream that could be managed in real time. Those records of data are captured in a data historian, which is later on then used to train the machine learning models that can predict and prescribe the next best action for that operator. The process expert at the manufacturing line defines the yield threshold to be monitored, and essentially in real time is able to collect that data, where the data is then analyzed to ensure that it does not exceed the prescribed thresholds. If there is a detection of an anomaly in a particular critical process parameter or that exceeds the range that's specified, an email and a text notification is immediately sent along with the problem statement and potential remediation measures. The operator then adjusts the process based on that alert, and then is also able to analyze the data set that's extracted for investigation or production functions. The data sets themselves are displayed on an analytics console so that the operator can understand where the anomalies are. And then in number 6, we have automated procedures in place to detect any process shifts. And the process event is automated so that the IoT layer is instantaneously able to communicate to a central console any shifts that are happening, and the batch can then be interrupted to ensure the right process parameter is in place. So when you look at the software that was employed along with the devices, we put an IoT platform in place, we put in edge connectivity to the devices themselves, and then an event-based analytics engine that's looking at the specified critical quality attributes, the critical process parameters that are used to achieve that critical quality attribute. And then it essentially is doing a time series data analysis and correlation evaluation to basically guide the operator when the process parameter is trending towards an excursion event, that it gives the operator a prescription or let's say advice on what operational parameters should be adjusted to preserve the process parameter range and prevent excursion. So let's now talk about how you actually define a roadmap and achieve Pharma 4.0. First and foremost is developing a structured data model that enables the structured data definitions of both process and materials, and these should be aligned to ISA standards 88, 95, and 99 to ensure that you have a harmonized data model of how these hierarchies of data are created. The second step in that journey is to leverage that structured data set, both process and materials, to collaborate with internal manufacturing or with CDMOs for materials and process development. And the important aspect of that is to establish pervasive change control so that as the process models are being refined, that change is instantly communicated to all the stakeholders across the network boundaries. The third step in that journey is to evolve to a structured data-based tech transfer and scale-up process. In today's world, most of the tech transfer is done with document-centric data, or what we call electronic data, not with digital data. So if you have a foundational layer of digital data sets for process and materials, one can envision that those structured data sets can then be transmitted and communicated to internal manufacturing or the external network and can be readily leveraged by them in their execution mechanisms. And this really sets up this relational model of defining the requirements for the product, aligning those requirements to critical quality attributes defined in a process development construct, defining the critical process parameters for each of the stages and their operation steps, and aligning those key process parameters to manufacturing systems, thereby avoiding the manual transposition or transcription of data extracted from documents and rekeyed into these execution systems. Step 4 will be to integrate those standardized and structured product and process data elements into ERP and MES systems so that you have a continuous flow of digital data into the execution systems. And step 5 of Pharma 4.0 is to establish a data science strategy for advanced analytics where you can converge electronic batch records data with change control product and process definition data to enable right country, right product batch traceability. We can also integrate those electronic batch records with regulatory information management systems for process validation submissions. We can also use IoT-enabled hard and soft sensors to drive the training of the AI models that predict changes in parameters during the scale-up process. So the journey for each of the pharma companies will be slightly different, but there is a unified model that can be adopted. The current single submission-based control strategy plays a key role in ensuring that critical quality attributes are met and that the quality target product profile is realized. But this does not, however, enable production-specific changes related to GMP, facilities, utilities, or equipment to mitigate process variability. The effect of unknown process parameters, material attributes, and impurities are often not addressed in a single submission-based control strategy. Furthermore, it's difficult to foresee these variations over the complete product lifecycle during the development phase. So when process and product understanding require a change, this needs to be instantly communicated not only to the internal manufacturing organizations, but to the regulatory authorities, potentially in multiple markets. It's also important to refine that control strategy that comes out of development in a structured fashion and to enhance it to this structured digital data set that can be readily leveraged and executed in manufacturing. Data integrity is still an issue along the pharmaceutical value chain, since repeatable, robust, and right first time based pharmaceutical business processes have not been fully implemented. So establishing foundational digital process and material development data management mechanisms must be adopted to ensure a continuous and uninterrupted flow of digital data to enable data as a harvestable and reusable asset. However, assessment of the aspirational maturity level must be conducted first to create a pharma client-specific roadmap for Pharma 4.0 adoption. So the journey is, as I mentioned before, going to be slightly different for everyone, but we have a road mapping process that has worked fairly effectively. The COVID pandemic has exposed that the pharmaceuticals industry must learn to respond quickly to emerging global health events and quickly pivot their product portfolio development and manufacturing capabilities while reducing reliance on human decisions and interventions. So when you look at how you address the adoption of Pharma 4.0 to enable speed to market, the first step of the journey is to assess where you are in terms of your aspirational end state. So this typically entails working with executives across a variety of functional areas and working with business stakeholders to understand what are their main concerns and how they would see Pharma 4.0 adoption enabling or addressing their functional needs. From that, we can develop a current state digital thread maturity assessment that highlights the gaps or the business opportunities for fulfilling those gaps. And then we can align that to a current state maturity level. Once we've defined the current state maturity level, we can define a roadmap for the architecture of how digital Pharma 4.0 principles can be leveraged. We would collect all of the required capabilities, characterize them, and prioritize them. We then translate those into specific use cases that could be enabled with the adoption of specific digital technologies. We would then develop a benefits hypothesis to extrapolate a business case and define the value and the value realization timeline, and then define the aspirational maturity level and the timeline to achieve that. Once we have those elements in place, we can move into realization planning, where we can define what is the minimum viable product that we need to deliver in order to drive value. Multiple MVPs can be used against multiple use cases to quickly prove out that those use cases will drive value across the enterprise. Part of that also entails selection of the appropriate technologies to support that value creation. This culminates in a digital enterprise reference architecture where we highlight and detail out the levels of integration and the data elements that need to be addressed as part of the implementation of Pharma 4.0 digital tool sets. The next step is to develop the vision, and that's really defining the governance model across all of these applications, because in this regulated environment, we have to make sure that we follow GMP principles and that all of these digital technologies and the data sets that they produce are done so in a validated fashion. The business case is then extended to make sure that value is driven from the collection of use cases that have been defined, and then present that back to the business to ensure that there's alignment to the adoption strategy. And the last piece of that is also to make sure is that the executives are in alignment with that roadmap and are bought into the value. So in summary, significant opportunities exist for pharmaceutical companies to extend standardized applications from discovery through post-market surveillance and pharmacovigilance, and really enable this pervasive digital thread all the way from discovery through pharmacovigilance across both IT and OT applications, leveraging industry standards such as ISA 88, 85, and 99. The adoption of these Pharma 4.0 principles can unlock the efficiency and effectiveness improvements with the adoption of digital methods and technologies to accelerate product development timelines, including time to clinical trials, improvements to manufacturing efficiency, reducing manufacturing process latencies, along with tighter integration to quality and regulatory information management systems. So in closing, I would like to thank you for spending the time with me, and I look forward to continuing the discussions with any of you. Thank you.
Hi, I am Ketan Khambada from Kevin Technologies, and we specialize in digitization of industrial assets as well as process control. We have been working in the area of digitalization and industrial automation for the last 20 years, and we came across this unique opportunity with a large pharmaceutical company that not only developed the vaccine for coronavirus in a record time, but also put up ambitious plans to set up a manufacturing facility that could cater to the requirements of the nation. They approached Kevin Technologies for the digitization and industrial automation of the complete vaccine manufacturing plant. Having a vast experience in this field of automation, we started work on this and approached Rockwell Automation, who have the right set of tools in terms of software and hardware to cater to such a very critical requirement. Kevin Technologies, along with Rockwell Automation, had detailed discussions with the client and their process team on how we can help them visualize the process as well as precisely control the process. Since the company wanted advanced features such as data historian and audit trails, Rockwell Automation's hardware and software ecosystem provided us with the right set of tools to achieve this. We hope to complete the implementation, and very soon this facility will produce the much needed vaccines for COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome. CNBC TV 18 and Moneycontrol together bring new program, Manufacturing Powering Economic Recovery, in partnership with Rockwell Automation. Well, I'm Archana Shukla, Associate Editor with CNBC TV 18 and moderator for the first virtual session of the 4 that you will see in this special program. Today's session is going to be on Make in India, Pharmacy of the World. Well, India is the largest producer and provider of generic drugs across the globe. India's pharma exports touched a little over $20 billion in FY20, and there was room for further growth there. Add to that, India supplies about 50% of the vaccine requirement of the world, especially to the African continent and to the low and middle income countries. As the decade unfolds, the opportunities for the Indian pharma sector lies in establishing itself, one, as the pharmacy of the world, and two, also to progress and become an innovation hub, a life sciences innovation hub. The industry is making that change. Last 1 year of COVID pandemic has seen a fast movement on that path, which brought pharma and life sciences at the helm, at the focal point of the change that we saw across the globe. The industry is embracing technology. There is a keen focus on bringing digital health technology investments across companies of pharmaceutical and life sciences industry. So as the COVID pandemic pulled the trigger, what will it take for India to pivot from being the pharmacy of the world to becoming a global life sciences innovation hub, and what technological interventions will help India make that change? To discuss this and more, I have a panel of esteemed panelists here. Shriji Gopinathan, Global CIO, Lupin Limited; Anjani Kumar, Chief Information Officer, Strides; J. Jayaseelan, Chairman, the Indian Pharmaceutical Association; Mr. Ram Kumar Isaki, Vice President, Eisai Pharmaceutical; and Mr. Arvind Kakru, Country Head of Rockwell Automation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here in the first of the virtual sessions here to discuss where is the Indian pharmaceutical industry headed. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you so much for sparing time here at this very special panel discussion on Moneycontrol. Mr. Jayaseelan, let me bring that question to you. We've seen India develop and grow as the largest seller of medicines over the last few decades. But despite multiple programs on the R&D space, push on research and development, we still don't have an innovator company in India. What will it take to push Indian pharma on that path ahead?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you mentioned, India is the pharmacy of the world currently, mainly because of exporting generic drugs. We are the number one in manufacturing generic drugs and exporting over 200 countries. That is the reason currently India is called as the pharmacy of the world. But what you said on the other side, innovation, inventing of new drug is still a question that we could not achieve. The reason are multiple. First and foremost reason is for innovation to bring a new drug today into pharmaceutical arena. The estimated cost is around $2 to $3 billion. I am talking on dollars in terms of international level. So, and if we do in India, still it can come down to say $1 billion. How many companies, independent companies, can afford this kind of research? So what is happening is, if you see what is happening globally, most of the research happening in universities, industry, and also support from government and the fund house. So it is a triangle. So if you want to improve the innovation and research, a pharma company alone cannot do that, because a certain amount of revenue only can be allotted for the, for the future research. So a close connection between institutions which is giving pharmaceutical or medical education and research should tie up with pharmaceutical industry, along with a fund grant from government and big fund houses is required. First is fund. And if you see other things, what is required, India is already having pharmaceutical or biotechnology knowledge scientists we have. IT skill, India is the top in the world. We know today we are going to talk much on that. Data management, everything is required for innovation. India is having already. English speaking, everything we have. What is mainly lacking is a huge fund is required for innovation, which should be supported through this channel, what I said.
Okay. Mr. Jayaseelan, I take your point on the fact that it obviously requires large amount of funding and collaboration both from academia, industry, as well as the government. Let me take the follow-up question to Mr. Anjani Kumar. Sir, in this budget, the finance minister also made a reference to this, and yesterday at BioAsia event, Amitabh Kant of the Niti Aayog also made a reference that we need to see more investments in R&D from the private sector. Now, where is it that private sector investments are falling short? What, in your sense, can be the way forward? Are we seeing more investment in R&D and innovation from the private sector right now?
So, pretty pertinent question. I would say, first of all, we will have to see what is the journey of any industry, how it evolves. And I am from digital background. I'll take that example. First, we started with the Y2K work. Then we went into the internet provider of the internet application provider of the world, application development, and whole outsourcing model. And we scaled it up, right? Once we scaled it up to a certain level, then we went into product development. Now there are a few companies like Zoho, which is product is coming right out of India. So similarly, the case in pharma also. And Jayaseelan talked about that we need a lot of investment. One is the investment from the private sector. Of course, as private sector companies, generic players, many of them are more than 2 billion or 1 billion already hitting in the turnover. And that's where you will see now, how do they scale up next? And some part is already coming to innovative medicines, companies like Dr. Reddy's, companies like Bharat Biotech, right? They are already putting the money. And I see there is a lot of focus, which is changing from the private players and venture capitalists a lot on the innovative medicine. When we have the technology, when we have the people, when we have the ecosystem, then why not to scale it up through the innovative medicine? And that's where I see private players getting in. But since innovative medicines are long gestational cycle, you will see it little slowly, impact you will see slowly.
Okay, it will be a slow cycle of investment, but Mr. Anshni Kumar, we've been listening to this for almost many years, and the government has been trying to push. Is there any sort of government programs or efforts, incentives that you are still waiting for, the industry is waiting for, that could push this ahead? Because the government on its part says that it's the industry that's holding back on the investments. What is it? It's just if briefly you can address that.
Sure. So from the industry perspective, government perspective, more than anything else, incentive is not one of the things. I would say, again, it's a long gestational cycle, and incentive comes a little later. I would say the whole tightening of the IP rules, probably if government could pay more attention and industry body, academia could be brought into a single stage where we talk about this is the IP protection and we do in a digital way, use technologies like blockchain to make sure that infringements are not happening. Probably that might accelerate. This is again my personal view. But from the investment incentive perspective, I don't think industry is just waiting for more incentive to get into innovative medicines.
Well, Mr. Shriji Gopinathan, if I can pose this question to you, while India is the largest seller of generic medicines, we still do not have an innovative or an innovator drug from India. There have been multiple R&D programs. Most pharmaceutical companies have a research and development arm which is focusing on some or the other sort of R&D, but this is mostly incremental. As far as innovative R&D is concerned, as far as pushing India to become an innovation hub, what steps are required at this point in time that will help India take that leap?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. Well, I don't think I fully agree to the statement that the manufacturing infrastructure and product development in the life sciences industry is still lacking. I think compared to what we were a decade ago, we are in a much more advanced state, and I think we are very nicely positioned to go and to go over that tipping point, so to say. And you can see that not only the government but also the leadership of the life sciences industry in this country is very actively talking about it, and not just talking about it, taking proactive steps in moving in that direction. The opportunity is there, it is clearly seen and realized, and hence there is no other way other than to grab the opportunity and go and make it happen. Now, if you look at the Indian pharmaceutical industry, as we all know, we started off in the generics business. There is still a significant volume that we do in the generics business, but there are many initiatives that has taken our company as well as other companies where there is own molecule development that is happening, and also there are significant partnerships established with meaningful partners in making that happen, other than the independent initiatives that is going on. So if you now look at from where I am sitting, and if you look at how we can leverage technology to enable that process, so far we have been significantly looking at how can we push pharmaceutical industry to being a laggard in technology adoption, to taking the opportunities that the newest technologies can bring. But more so we were doing in manufacturing and supply chain, and so to some extent in sales and marketing as well. And over the last year, I think sales and marketing has gone much ahead compared to the other areas. One area where we haven't done too much in terms of leveraging data analytics and leveraging that for advancing what we can do is R&D. Yeah. So how we can leverage data in terms of understanding the drug discovery process, drug repositioning process, clinical trial management systems. And this is where I think we need to start focusing on as an industry, which will actually help us manage the innovations and the leadership positions that we want to achieve from a product development point of view. So this is, excuse me, this is an area definitely a lot more energy, investment, focus has to be put in. just like we have put in the other functional areas. So I think it's a matter of time, I would say, now that we do that. We are already discussing about this. I know not only in my company but in other companies as well. So it's going to happen, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, let me take the discussion forward and bring in Mr. Ram Kumar Isaki. Mr. Isaki, you represent an innovator pharmaceutical company operating in India, the Japanese Eisai Pharmaceuticals. In your experience, in your company's experience, what kind of technological interventions can help build this new age capability of product development that we're talking about, and also make it at minimal cost? If you can bring that perspective in.
Yeah, it's actually, see, Eisai is basically an innovative company, and we mainly focus on oncology and neurology. And most of the R&D is driven from our global R&D centers. And in India, actually, even if you see, we do very limited kind of research in India in terms of bringing a new drug from India. And see, one of the reason, if you see, like, if you look at the data, 6% is only is being invested in any R&D expenses when you compare with your sales. Whereas if you compare with other Western pharmaceutical company, mostly that data says about around 20% is they spend on R&D versus their sales turnover. That is one of the main part which is we need to really improve. Right. And another thing is, if you look at from global perspective, even in our company also, there are a lot of research we do along with the institute. Whereas in India, that is still lagging, and there is a very huge gap between academia as well as industry, where our expectation is somewhat different, where the industry curriculum is totally different. And another reason, if you see, even if you see, the data says only 2,000 PhD students join pharmacy. Whereas if you look at in other countries, it is more than 15,000 students they do. And also we have a lot of IP related issues, and our regulatory framework is not very quick enough to support any new innovative drugs. If you see in generic, if you see, we have almost 40% of medicines we supply to US, and 25% to the UK, and 50, as you said, 50% of vaccines are manufactured from India. But still, if you look at any new innovative drugs, we are very handful, and one or two companies only doing it. From technology point of view, the companies are now started working on continuous manufacturing, and a lot of other companies gone into a continuous manufacturing in abroad. Even our company also is working towards that, and there are a lot of multinational companies now focusing on continuous manufacturing, where you can reduce the cost of manufacturing and get a better efficiency.
Okay, you spoke about continuous manufacturing, you spoke about R&D. Let me bring in Arvind Kakru of Rockwell Automation into the conversation here. Mr. Kakru, if you can add how can the existing gaps, particularly from the R&D side, if we talk about, can be bridged with technological interventions, things that Rockwell Automation may also be working with. How can the sector output be increased with the help of technology?
Sure. So, Archana, if we think about, how do we kind of make broader leaps, and, we try to merge, the strong industries that we have, both IT and healthcare, which is the digital, I would say, bridge between these two sectors. And that's where I think best of, I think the innovation is going to happen. And if you already talked about, right, India is accounting for more than half of the global vaccine production. 25% of medicines used in UK are made from India, and one of the 3 pills in US is produced by an India pharma company. And similarly, IT is more like an established player, and we have so many consumers getting added, almost 40 million every year, to an already second highest active base of active internet users over the world. So data is going to be at center of everything. New policies are driving tech innovation and digital innovation in healthcare sector, and patients are more engaged with their care and experts. and expect the same convenience and transparency for their services. So advanced analytics, automation, and the cloud, they're making it easy for people and pharma companies to increase productivity and improve the quality of decision making. Digitization has started to improve the outcomes and provide personalized medicines. So there are tremendous, I would say, strides made now as far as patient care and improving outcomes is concerned. But at the same point of time, improving speed to market, better flexible manufacturing, empowering patients, big data leveraging, which is more to do with, which is more to do with connected supply chains and scheduling and demands, and so on and so forth. Some of these things are really critical. Then automating and transitioning to the new business models is another focus area. Majority of pharma companies are leveraging data to create new revenue streams, which would include data as a service or selling raw data insights and recommendations to people. And more than 1/3 of the companies possibly use innovative marketplaces for on-demand services that improve margin by a good measure. So, and also I think some of these technologies can be leveraged to manufacturing piece of it, which can be more related to quality control, which can be related to clean room parameters, controlling quantities, time, temperature, and other cold chain logistics also. And finally, for regulatory compliance, meeting FDA requirements with agility. And finally, I would say also solving the problem of counterfeit raw materials and medications. So these all technologies will come into play in providing very, very reliable and efficient solutions to the industry. So all I could say is utilization of data is driving pharma business models and strategy, and that is only going to increase multi-fold going forward.
Okay. You spoke about a whole host of technological interventions that are currently being used and must be used going forward to make the transition and shift from where we are currently to what we want to become as far as R&D, as far as manufacturing in the pharmaceutical space is concerned. Mr. Anjani Kumar, if I can come back to you and taking the point forward from what Mr. Kaku was saying, we've seen multiple disruptions in the last 1 year as far as supply chain was concerned, as far as manufacturing was concerned. Even if we look at patient interaction, etc., from or a doctor interaction is concerned, how, in your sense, can these disruptions be managed in the times to come? Some of the interventions that your company would have taken, if you can take us through that.
Interesting person. I come from an interesting background where I used to be in consulting, digital consulting. Then I have gone through different industries like logistics, automobile, and pharma is my first stint in this strides. Right? So if you look at the whole digitization journey itself, pharma, I would say it is more towards the lower side of digitization. But last 2 years, what we are seeing already is gearing up on the digitization, digital transformation, and the whole automation. And if you look at any industry, how it does the digital transformation, 2-3 ways. One is through the digital transformation. Another is new equipment, new machines, and which is newer generation. And third one is the automation. In pharma, all three are on. Disruptions, when it comes, one could be the volume play or innovations. Two, if there are newer players, if you look at companies like Uber, Ola, or e-commerce, there are newer set of business models that we are already seeing in pharma. So a lot of the products which is coming these days, it does not just come as a product, it's a digital pill. So basically, when you are taking medicine, how is the impact of it? So some of them will give you wearable device, whereas many of them will use the existing wearable device or other health parameters to try that. So that is one change we are seeing, especially the pharma consumer companies and many of the other players also. They are coming up with many of the Indian companies have the whole digital pill concept. That's number one. Number two, what we see in COVID, right? We always talk about why do we need automation? Our workforce is cheaper. But in COVID, industry got to see if you have a lot of dependency on manpower, it can hit you. And that is where I am seeing automation and whole digital transformation being accelerated in pharma industry. Right? Look from e-logbook, EBMRs, the AI/ML of the quality and analytical records. MES, they talked about how do you use the data, how do you bring the compliance through digital means. So one of the things which is very common is anytime readiness, right? And most of the time, anytime readiness came through traditional means. Now you are talking of how do you do it through digital, and especially compliance is very, very important for our industry. So that's another area. One area which is happening, which has surprised all of us, is the whole technology uses in R&D, and which is very much a disruptive use. If you look at it, what used to take 8 to 12 years, now you are talking of in 1 year when they could not get the vaccine, people were already questioning why is it taking so much time. And this all has been possible just by uses of the right technologies, right from AI. What you do is identifying the molecules, finding the efficacy, finding the clinical trial targets, analyzing the results. And regulators are way ahead of us as well, because regulators are using AI/ML, which they used to take months to analyze the data. Now using the technology, they could analyze the data in no time and they can give you approval. So the whole pharma R&D ecosystem and regulatory mechanism, if you look at it, it's changing. And we are, of course, being part of the industry, we are seeing the whole lot of change in that.
Okay. You raised a very interesting point about using, the data and the technology on the R&D side, and as well as global regulators using that. I would like to have Mr. Isaki on this point and take this point forward. Mr. Isaki, with the kind of R&D work that you're doing here in India, and even for your global parent, Eisai Pharmaceutical, how has it been in the last 1 year as far as R&D is concerned, with the use of some of the technological interventions like MES, etc., that Anjani Kumar was talking about? What has been your experience in discussions with the global regulator, considering on-ground audits are not happening for last 1 year, and it may still take some more time before regulators actually come on ground to do their audits? So how has that been functioning, and what is the way forward that you see on that side?
In COVID-19 has given that kind of an opportunity to look into these new initiatives, which can minimize the disruption, so that the stable supply of medicines are available throughout the country. And in R&D, there are a lot of initiatives are going on, like they are started using PAT tools, where you can do online analysis, different from your conventional analysis, whether you give the sample for analysis from quality control, then you wait for the results and then to proceed. Instead of that, now most of the companies are working on PAT tools, where you can see the real-time analysis, and you can predict even the batches, and even data analytics gives you a lot of advantage, where you can make a quality consistent, and you can also improve the yield based on your golden batch parameter. Suppose, assume in a batch you got a very maximum yield in particular batch. You can that the data can give you what happened in this particular batch. Then you try to maintain that parameters consistently in next batches, you will be able to reproduce that results, so that even though you have a variation which are allowed in the batches, you will be able to maintain the consistent quality and consistent yield, which will definitely is going to reduce your cost of manufacturing.
Mr. Jayaseelan, if you can come in on the point on supply chain hurdles and issues and disruptions that we saw over the last 1 year. Where do we stand right now as far as supply chain for some of the key ingredients is concerned? We saw the Indian pharmaceutical industry struggle, although eventually we came out, just as fine as we were. But the threat was that there could be a supply shortage of raw materials and ingredients. How have we dealt with that, both from the perspective of technology And the second aspect that I would like your view is on the PLI scheme, which has been designed to make the Indian pharmaceutical industry Atmanirbhar, so to say, as far as raw materials and ingredients, pharma ingredients are concerned. Have we been able to make headway into the PLI scheme if we look at it broadly from the perspective of managing supply chain disruptions?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would like to record here, if you see, in spite of so many issues, lockdown, Indian pharma industry ensured drug security, drug supply. I'm not talking on vaccine, I'm talking on all other routine drugs, which is necessary for all population to live. We provided, in spite of all difficulties during the pandemic, not only to our country, also to the international countries. But definitely, as you said, there was a lot of challenges in terms of supply chain. What is happening with Indian pharma industry right now is, for regulated markets like US and other places, the API required is manufactured within India. We have capability and we know every technology on API manufacturing we have. But considering the cost of goods which is required for domestic market and semi-regulated market, we are also depending on one country, the nearby country, which we all know, for API. And since there during pandemic, a lot of freight issues were there between China and India, we had a small problem of getting API and all, but we overcame all those things because Indian manufacturers supplied that shortage. So as such, if you see, you cannot mention that name few drugs which are not at all available in last 1 year. That is not there. We could overcome this challenge. Yes.
So that I totally agree, but we did have a threat that if the supply chain disruptions continue, then the raw material supplies that were available with the Indian companies might dry out, and we may not have raw materials. The good part was that most Indian manufacturers had good amount of inventory already available with them as far as raw materials are concerned. But my question, sir, was to focus largely on the PLI scheme, and do you think that is there has been a lot of discussion between the government, industry on the framework of PLI, and all of that is being discussed from the perspective of bringing that sort of self-reliance as far as raw materials is concerned. Have we made a headway into that? Are we seeing Indian companies take on that scheme more actively?
Yeah, I'm coming to that only. Actually, considering the importance of the dependency on API on one country, our government has come up with the PLI scheme, and particularly bulk drug park, right? And the scheme is the industry and government, multiple discussion happened. They arrived what are the products, and they identified the key intermediates and the API required to be produced at Indian level. So all those schemes government is started implementing. And but if you ask me, it is in the beginning level. The bulk drug park, we are all expecting, industry side is expecting, and it is in the process of happening. But we are self-reliant. One point I would like to tell you once again is, we are nothing that sort will happen if we are not getting API from the neighboring country. Indian companies are capable of manufacturing that API internally. That I want to reinforce. But PLI scheme is definitely good, and they have done a wonderful work of identifying what is the most important API required, dependence, considering the dependency of API, etc. And they have come with the scheme, and it is in the process. Might be in another couple of years, we will be 100% self-reliant.
Well, absolutely. Mr. Sriji Gopinathan, if you can come in on that point, there is great potential for India to become self-reliant, to boost Make in India. What would your advice be, on becoming self-reliant and produce inherently Indian products and services? What should the industry look at doing, and what sort of support do you expect from the government?
Yeah, so and this is a problem not just for pharma, right? I mean, this is a problem for any industry that we look at, whether it is FMCG or any industry that you look at. Supply chain management has become a lot more complex, and it needs a scientific, collaborative way of dealing with it. I mean, we all call it as connected planning. There are different solutions out there. There is integrated business planning solutions. from different companies out there. But what I have seen in my experience is that many companies have taken that path as a technology solution approach. And it doesn't work. It fails if you do that. There's a lot of science. This is probably the most scientific area in managing any business. Supply chain, demand planning, supply planning, procurement related to that, etc. And it has to be taken up as a business initiative where we understand the dynamics of how the forecast-based as well as demand-based planning algorithms need to be put in place for this sector or this company that we are talking about. If we approach it that way, then there are enough technology solutions there. And in many cases now there are end-to-end solutions also. In the past, what we have seen is there were buckets of solutions in each of these smaller areas within supply chain, which had to be then integrated, which itself is a pain. But now there are end-to-end solutions available from different players where we can implement solutions right from the demand to supply to production planning, and also procurement planning, as well as fulfillment to the warehouses and distributors beyond that. So that end-to-end mechanism, it needs to be looked at as a business initiative, and not just by implementing the tool, but also looking at organizationally what needs to be put in place. Do we need horizontal organization to be put in place? Do we need end-to-end ownership to be brought in, where there is clear handoffs between the departments, instead of there are different tools, Excel sheets outside the system that starts floating around. So it's probably the most difficult area to tackle in any business, and hence it has to be sponsored clearly by the company leadership. So this can be in the form of connected planning, this can be in the form of supplier collaboration, this can be in the form of contract manufacturing management, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple areas within this, but an end-to-end integrated approach clearly with a leadership vision is needed.
Mr. Isaki, any thoughts on this? How is your company managing this important element of digital transformation, which is securing your systems from the vulnerabilities that digital infrastructure brings in?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest threat all the pharma companies are facing when you're, especially when you're moving into a complete digital space. And we have the very robust strategy in place starting from design itself. When you have when we have a lot of servers, we keep some redundant server, even though if it is costly. So those kind of system being implemented during the design space itself. And also, as Anjali Kumar said, the training to the employees, which is very, very important. And also sometimes we have to create some kind of a mock attack, so that how the people are behaving, that will give us what all the gaps are in the system, which we can take some proactive actions on that.
Okay. Mr. Jayasilan, if you can help us understand from the industry perspective, AI and data is being spoken about, being used, but from the manufacturing perspective, how have we seen industries and pharmaceutical companies adapt AI and data as far as manufacturing processes are concerned? Are there any key learnings that we have from the past few months of that being used by some of the companies that you can talk about?
Yeah. So I'm happy to listen to the other speakers who talked about this AI and the digitalization transformation in pharma, research, innovation, everywhere. What they said is perfect. You have come to the point, even manufacturing, what we are thinking is it would be useful, because we all know any pharmaceutical product, if you see, there will be a range. Even in quality control, if you see, for some particular product, it might be 95 to say 102 or 96 to 100% like that. Whereas if you go into the artificial intelligence using manufacturing, like one of the speakers said, what will happen is it will have a 0% human error. See, no two subsequent batch will have the same result. Same manufacturing chemist, everybody will be manufacturing the products. But if you see the result, the subsequent batch will have a marginal difference in the assay result. I'm talking on the quality control, right? Though it is acceptable. So what I'm thinking is, it is not only going to improve the manufacturing productivity and also profitability. I feel your AI will also improve the say quality parameter also. You can fix 99.8% would be the want for every product. Even 100 batch can be repeated like that, because it is going to avoid 0%. It is going to avoid human error. So all these things, only challenge for us as a manufacturing industry people is to adopt into the digitalization. Like, no, it is going to definitely useful for us. It will bring down the operational cost by 30%. Many people, digitalization specialists, are approaching our manufacturing companies, routine manufacturing companies, and I'm happy to share here, they are even telling, they are not asking any upfront fees. They are telling, from the profitability what we earn from our manufacturing plant using the digital technique, they are ready to take their share. That way, a lot of our companies have started testing them. So definitely it is going to help not only in quality and also increasing the quantity of our production.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not even quantity, quality, both aspects would be served. Mr. Sriji Gopinathan, across the industry, we've seen companies have been adopting transformational change as far as manufacturing processes are concerned. What has been some of the programs that your company intends to and plans to adopt as far as emerging technologies is concerned, to bring in that transformation in the manufacturing process?
Yeah, I think one area where we need partners like Rockwell and others, who needs to work with us, is how do you build platforms, systems, machines which are going to be compatible from a larger ecosystem point of view, and which will also take care of the information security requirements. One of the big challenges that we face as we speak is many of these machines and instruments run on very old operating systems, which becomes a vulnerability in our platform, and hence the IT and the OT integration becomes very, very difficult. So we are forced to then keep them isolated, figuring out then integration mechanisms for at least the data exchange and things like that, and it becomes an offline sort of system because of that in many instances. So I think players like these need to take it seriously and build it into their product roadmap. That they need to be compliant with the latest operating systems out there, which can actually be integrated into tools like SCCM, where we can automatically patch the systems as we go based on the releases that we get from the operating system providers. So this is a huge issue in my mind. It's a disconnected ecosystem that we have at this point in time between the OEM players and the IT players and companies like ours. So this needs to come together, and I think the OEM players need to take it very seriously. This is this is an interesting phenomenon. As much as we talk about Make in India and self-reliance, I actually believe that we are in a super connected global world. And I don't think there is any going back on that. Of course, we need to build our capability as a country. We need to graduate ourselves from being the back office or the arbitrage sort of market where cost benefits can be brought in, to being a capability-driven, innovation-driven, knowledge-based economy. There is no doubt about it. We need to do that. But if you try to do that by disconnecting from the globe, I can guarantee you that it is going to be a failure, right? And look at the most successful economies, right? I mean, they create the ecosystem to not just flourish the good technologies, but also bringing in the best of the talent from around the world. And I think that is what is needed in India as well. We need to be very proud of the Make in India and the self-reliant way of doing it. But that's not by disconnecting with the rest of the world, right? I mean, supply chain as well, we cannot disconnect. Talent also, we cannot disconnect. And that is very important to recognize and accept and understand. Let us embrace the opportunity which is out there. There's a huge, rich talent pool that this country has, which we all know that when they're outside India, they come out with really fabulous outcomes. Why not those outcomes inside the country? I think that's the way we should be looking at bringing back some of the good talent that we have outside there. But don't just look at as Indian talent. There is talent from across the world, across the countries that we should be tapping into. That way, this becomes an attraction hub for talent, like many other successful economies have done. That's what I would say. The base is there, especially from a pharma world. The foundation is really strong. I don't think there is any other country which is as strong as us, and hence we need to make this a hub which becomes attractive for anybody around the world, not just our people, to come and become a part of this wonderful journey.
Mr. Anjani Kumar, let me take a view from you. We're talking about blockchains being used to improve supply chain transparency and also in the manufacturing side as well. Are companies like yours using that in the mainstream, or is it still part of the initial pilots? And if you are using it in the mainstream, what has been the experience on that side?
So blockchain has been touted as an industry supply chain solution for pharma industry for quite some time. But what we see as a success, we see very sketchy so far. I will give you a little background. I mean, why blockchain or any technology? Because counterfeit is one of the counterfeit and tracing and tracking are two of the biggest problem of the pharma industry, pharma supply chain. So first, some time back, US started the concept of serialization. Of course, serialization is good. It has solved problem, but just in US, it has created extra challenges both on the supplier side, on the provider side. And that's where we all are trying the blockchain. We did work with the government of India. They had an initiative where we were part of it. It was done by Oracle, and we were just a partner company. What we could see is experience was good. POC was good. It was a POC. It was good. But the whole ecosystem, unless you bring the whole ecosystem on blockchain, it is very difficult. Or even serialization, since US government mandated, FDA mandated, then you were able to see a traction onto it. Otherwise, unless a government agency owns it and says this is the mandate, or consortium of companies gets formed, it is very difficult to see, be it blockchain or any other technology, being so successful in tracing and tracking, or any of the supply chain solution like this. So that is, I see it's still few years away. And somebody owning up to, I see some consortiums have been formed, but it's still not credible enough. Or I see a traction that I could see, no, this is the future, not yet.
Okay, no, not yet. We don't see that sort of an involvement from the government as far as owning these blockchain infrastructure is concerned, is what you're saying. So there is still more time before Indian manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing can maybe utilize blockchain to the absolute ultimate point that they can. Is that the point that you're making, Mr. Anjani Kumar? I just want a clarification on that.
That's one. And number two is also, even from the industry side, I don't see a consortium being formed or a private players coming in and making big waves, big investments, or both the points.
Okay. Mr. Isaki, would you want to comment on that? Why wouldn't the pharmaceutical industry come together and make that effort if blockchain is actually a technological intervention that will help manufacturing, supply chain, and overall pharmaceutical industry go ahead? What could be the hurdles which is stopping the private industry from moving on that road?
See, basically, as he said, there is still we yet to see the result, and basically there is people are not confident enough to get into a blockchain, especially in supply chain of pharmaceuticals. So right now we are managing with the track and trace with the serialization, and also through MES it is being managed. As Sanjini Kumar said, it's still maybe it will take some more time to get into this.
Okay, okay. All right. Well, time for me to wrap up this conversation. I'll give the last word to Mr. Arvind Kakru. If you can, give us a way ahead for the pharmaceutical industry, considering your experience not only from pharma but also the other industries where technology has taken a leap and helped the industry take a leap ahead. What would be the best practices, for the pharmaceutical industry to secure a compliance and regulatory framework in pharma with the help of technology?
Yeah, Archana. So, I think most of them were talked about. I think, it's an industry where there's a lot of cost for innovation required, a lot of cost for R&D required. We need faster time to market for products, right? The cost of failure is pretty high. It's got more failure rates than many other industries, right? So it's based on that innovation. So if we can overall help provide some direction as far as transformative technologies is concerned, that'll be very helpful. We talked about artificial intelligence or machine learning, which has a big play here going forward. It's initial days, but we're already seeing a lot to do from the consumer point of view, and now it is also adapting to a very large extent on the manufacturing side as well. And it has the potential to diagnose drug discovery, patient monitoring, and treatment planning, and so on and so forth. Internet of Things, which possibly could be like Internet of Medical Things here, connected medical devices, I think is going to pick up pretty soon with a lot of these devices, having that ability to kind of connect and, even extending that to software as a medical device, which is like even devices have to be interconnected and all that. Blockchain, they talked about, Mr. Anjali and Mr. Ramkumar, a little bit of complexity there, but some use cases could be found in cold chain storage. From a security perspective, I think it's very critical. And then there could be things related to mobility, which is like connected devices and vehicles and all that, which is essential part of hospitals and ambulances and all those, that could again kind of be a play going forward. And finally, from a consumer standpoint, I would say do-it-yourself diagnostics, virtual care. These are some of the things which help people kind of do the diagnosis at home based on the convenience of the people, and provide a 24/7 healthcare access, and coaching and monitoring and so on and so forth. And then a lot to do with the manufacturing piece of it. We talked about all the digital technologies that will be helpful over there.
Absolutely, a whole host of activities, interventions that will take the Indian pharmaceutical industry on its leap ahead, from being the pharmacy of the world to also being an innovation hub and being self-reliant and Atmanirbhar with what is needed for the industry and for the world that the industry serves.
See, I have one point to say. See, in 2006, it was R&D expenses. There was a tax rebate of almost 200%. Then it is reduced to 150 in 2016, and from April 2020 onward, it's going to be 100%. Maybe we need to expect more from the government so that the innovation can be promoted.
Yeah, that is something that has been a point from the industry for almost past many years. But there has been no hearing this. The government says that private industry does not invest enough in R&D, despite the government making that incentive in the past few years. Is that a fair way to look at this situation?
See, we have to promote innovation. See, as long as we are promoting, we can get some kind of people who can come forward and work on the innovation. Now, India is only focusing on generic medicines. Now we look at the biotech, and this biosimilars is going to be a next big market for India, where 25% of revenue is going to be from that biosimilars, there could be a lot of incentives, and there should be a lot of some kind of center of excellence should be created from government point of view, so that where it can be a top governing process where some thought leadership can give some kind of a mentorship to the companies and academia as well as for researchers. So that can bring a lot of new ideas and new molecules from India.
I think that is something that is required, like to fund innovation. More institutes, I would say, on lines of these IITs, etc. We have some quality people, but not so many people, kind of cater to this demand because we're also exporting. I think some states have taken a step in terms of putting up those large parks, which will kind of fund that innovation. Say, for example, taking from auto example, which is like you create a hub and then you kind of automatically develop, the mini hubs or the sub ecosystems within or close by, and then also funding and concessions and those kind of things, which will help them be much more aggressive and competitive with respect to other global players.
Okay, all right. All points taken, gentlemen. Thank you so much for. Okay, Mr. Anjali Kumar. Yeah, please go ahead.
Only one point I wanted to make. One thing which I am noticing, pharma company is becoming agile. I mean, you saw during the COVID times, in no time, most of us, which we have never thought, working remotely enabled. Number two, somebody talked about the audit. When the virtual audit came, in no time, most of the companies were enabled with the smart glasses. So that's a characteristic change. Otherwise, pharma company have been very long time taking to change. And this is one pleasant change I would say I would want to add.
Absolutely. That is what we have to give to COVID. While it took lives, it brought in a lot of disruption, but it has also put the pharmaceutical and life sciences industry at the forefront and brought that change, and that too in a very short span of time that Mr. Anjali Kumar was talking about. And that has to be the learning and the most positive that we can take from the COVID pandemic. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here on Moneycontrol and giving your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
This is Shali Verma. I'm the Business Development Leader for India for Network and Security Services based out of Gurgaon. And today for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be talking on the subject of managing cybersecurity risk specific to life sciences industry. Every business today is challenged from a cybersecurity perspective. A few years ago, it was understood that certain sectors like critical infrastructure, say oil and gas or energy, are the big targets. However, globally, the threat landscape completely changed in 2017 with WannaCry and NotPetya hitting and taking down almost any or every industry. As I speak today with the recent attacks on pharma firms in India, we're just waiting to hear who's next. In the past couple of years, you've seen nearly $12 billion of damages due to ransomware. Leave aside the damage to reputation of these huge corporates or industry specifically. Kaspersky reports 54% suffered IP loss, with 21% being affected more than one time. What this could mean in life science organization is patients being affected. Most companies today take nearly 6 months to detect a data breach, even the major ones. And the total cost of cybercrime committed globally shall soon reach $6 trillion this year alone, 2021. So it is very important to embed the cybersecurity topic into companies' culture. Talk about the unplanned downtime or the cost of unscheduled downtime. 76% of time we take to even fix it. Zero or inadequate visibility of your assets, lack of right skill set. Production environment is a combination of IT and OT assets, hardware, software that work together and evolve over a period in time. And we got to manage that. Managing life cycle of assets and IT/OT convergence with appropriate skill sets and tools are critical to cyber hygiene and also the production uptime. Why are these industrial companies a target? And the simple answer is they have legacy unpatched infrastructure and lack of skilled resources. Most importantly, the industrial automation environment are poorly inventoried. If you do not know what is connected in the environment, you cannot secure it. Today, there are three factors driving a perfect storm that has raised the importance of protecting industrial systems. We all know that security was not the primary design principle for OT networks. Many brownfield systems were commissioned years ago and are inherently insecure. We also know that air gaps have disappeared as OT systems are increasingly interconnected with the IT networks for various important business purposes. We now hear a very active threat landscape impacting industrial control systems. This includes nation-state adversaries who continue to target critical infrastructure. This also includes non-targeted attacks like NotPetya and WannaCry that have caused billions of losses to operations from collateral damage and has a huge impact on life sciences companies. In 2017, NotPetya took out Merck's production for 2 months and costed over hundreds of millions of dollars. Organizations worldwide now understand that they don't have to be the target to be a victim of an attack. If life sciences, or rather in life sciences, the regulatory requirement is much greater than most other industries. And that means that they may have to be more careful with how you move data of your network, ensuring you have integrity of data both in transit and in rest. And that means that you have to do things in the network from a security standpoint, from a policy standpoint, that you may not do in other industries. Lastly, most organizations have no or very limited visibility into their ICS networks. Typically, our engagement begins with infrastructure development and management services. These offerings are designed to help you assess, design, and build a secure infrastructure, and then protect and maintain it. Offerings range from network assessment and industrial data center implementation to managed security services, threat detection, response, and remote support. A focus on one side of the business opens vulnerabilities to another. In IT, confidentiality is number one. However, in OT, availability is of utmost importance. That's a completely different approach, and our solutions are adjusted to that. We understand you and we speak your language. But also, and that's important, we speak the language of IT so we can make the bridge between IT and OT. We need alignment and effective listening, cross-functional task force. All this together with our exquisite ecosystem or partner ecosystem that we have with the leading industry partners like Cisco, Microsoft, OWL, you name it and you have it. Rockwell has been deploying network and cybersecurity solutions globally for over a decade now, and this has been a part of the entire connected services suite. The set of offerings is focused on helping you assess, design, implement, and manage your OT environment. These automation agnostic services encompass virtual infrastructure, networks, and cybersecurity. Whether you're a single site or an enterprise, services are scaled to meet you at your journey in a globally consistent manner. Specific to industrial cybersecurity, Today, we live in a connected world. The industrial Internet of Things and the increased connectivity that comes with it are driving manufacturers to evolve at an unprecedented rate. The latest wave of innovations has also inherent risks. Difficult to see these are real threats. Applying the cybersecurity to your manufacturing environment is about being able to manage your enterprise risk. It can be challenging to know where to start investing and how to make sure you are addressing risks that have the highest impact to your business. We believe both a strategic and tactical approach will help you achieve the desired outcome, that is, ensuring that you are truly impacting your security posture in a positive way. At Rockwell, we follow the proactive approach to industrial cybersecurity. This follows the NIST framework and across the cyber attack continuum, that is, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We break the cybersecurity attack continuum into three main stages. What customers may do proactively before a cyber incident, what can be deployed to detect in real time during a cyber incident, and may be done to restore manufacturing operations after a cyber incident. This outline provides our customers with a concrete understanding of Rockwell Automation's service capabilities and recommendations in before, during, or after a cybersecurity threat. We make things work smarter by connecting various dots in a manufacturing enterprise in a very secure way and bring smart manufacturing to life with a set of hardware, software, predictive and prescriptive analytics, and full-scale end-to-end lifecycle services. Digitally transformed businesses are best positioned to deal with the new normal. A robust, secure, scalable OT information infrastructure is critical to digitalization and business continuity. Rockwell offers a series of services and measures which can be taken independently or in parallel. You need to make sure you're following IT and OT best practices and have automation agnostic approach at any global scale, driving standards across multi-site enterprise. Please remember, no single technology, product, or methodology can fully secure industrial networks. And it is not a question of if, but really when. Securing industrial assets requires comprehensive security model based on a well-defined set of security policies. Policies should identify both security risks and potential mitigation techniques to address these risks. Protecting industrial assets require a defense in-depth security approach that addresses internal and external security threats. The objective with defense in depth is to both identify and delay an attack while increasing time to take action through countermeasures that help minimize negative effects of the attack. Now that we have spoken about the key components of a program in place, let's talk about visibility, or the roadmap and the best practices. The right here shows what you should know. Do you really know your network? What can an unpatchable Windows system do to you? Lack of visibility to the attack surface and threats across the global manufacturing supply chain is a very common challenge. You need to know what is the location of your asset. Where is it physically set up? What sort of a device? Is it a PLC? What is the firmware or the serial? What sort of an application is it running for? What are the communication protocols? And what is the frequency or the network bandwidth? All these details are a must to understand and have visibility of your OT network. Any trusted supplier need to look across the spectrum with technology, domain expertise, and partnerships to address the attack surfaces and overall continuum. In short, you can't protect what you don't see. You can't protect your toast from burning if you don't see it, as you can't protect your network from an attack if you don't know what assets you have. Visibility is a very important issue for any organization And in order to deal with it, we have to ensure that we have the right tools to make sure we have visibility. At Rockwell, we partner with Clarity. This is specifically for continuous threat detection services and secure remote access solutions. While I'm not doing a deep dive into these solutions due to time's sake, but please feel free to connect with me if you need to explore these options for your business outcomes. Thus far, we have focused on services, and here we look at products that already have security built in. You're already lessening the attack surface by using them. Vendors must build security into products with a focus on security throughout the product's life cycle. At Rockwell, we continue to aggressively expand our cybersecurity skills, the certifications, product capabilities, and services in ways that help our customers stay ahead of any new threats and focus on realizing new possibilities with digital transformation. Very recently, from the perspective of IEC 62443, 3-3 is the latest that we have certification for our DCS plant pack solution. ISO 27001 certification, which verifies global compliance, and Rockwell Automation Managed Services are delivered leveraging the highest standards of information security. Our focus on rapidly accelerating our cybersecurity managed services capabilities comes with our commitment to security in all that we do. This is a part of the value we bring with a security-first approach that requires time, money, and effort to maintain. That is an approach that is nearly impossible for a customer to deliver with OT resources as a secondary job on the plant floor. Make sure that whosoever that you work with or partner with in your cybersecurity journey, you are utilizing solutions and products that already have security built in. Leverage your in-house security experts and enable your security providers with enterprise integration. How would you go about building or starting a cybersecurity program? How would you make sure that from your X you reach a Y, which is a more desirable position when we talk about a cybersecurity roadmap? You must understand the vision. What sort of risk are you trying to mitigate? What is the strategy? Which facilities to start with? You could be not a single site, you could be a multi-site. Which probably is your most critical site across? Getting your cost estimates, etc. This shows a full plan from inception to launch, starting from a strategy to identifying your opportunity, making sure that you understand and develop a project return on investment. All this together and also having the ownership. We need to know that who within the organization is responsible for the cybersecurity journey. It is very important to look after the cybersecurity posture. There are various activities that you could begin with, and in your maturity journey, you might be a customer who's very aware of what are the loopholes or the gaps and what need to be targeted immediately. It could be a mix of low-hanging fruit, which are easy to counter, less cost and time, or it could be the most critical ones which have a very direct impact on your business and should be taken up without spending any more or delaying any more time. With global deployments, and we continue to learn and improve for successful program execution. In a short term, it is very critical to review the network architecture, understand vulnerabilities, misconfigurations in the ICS network. However, in the long term, develop a strategy to migrate and transform from the current security posture to a more desired level of cybersecurity. Sure, that is the intention. You need to make sure that you implement a cybersecurity framework like IEC 62443 or the NIST framework. Secure your operations networks with risk-based approach. Understand risk tolerance and business impact. Assess your security posture, your threats, the vulnerabilities. Develop and iterate a security profile. Implement prioritized action plan. Make sure that you manage, monitor, and respond to the needs. What I go back to is the attack continuum. Prepare for not only the bad actor hackers, but also well-intentioned mistakes. Your facility of the future requires comprehensive cybersecurity that goes beyond traditional IT systems, an industrial DMZ, and even a defense in-depth strategy. The next step in maintaining business continuity is to adopt capabilities addressing risks across an attack continuum, as I said earlier. The NIST cybersecurity framework outlines the following functions as a good place to start in implementing strong cyber hygiene practices. Understand your current attack surface and asset vulnerabilities, including your higher risk, obsolete hardware and software. Implement protective measures to safeguard your industrial control systems. Work with a partner to vigilantly monitor risks and detect when threats bypass your protection mechanisms. Develop an action plan for immediate response to security incidents and to minimize your damage. Quickly recover and return to production, making sure that you have a root cause incident investigation to follow. By practicing good cyber hygiene, you can minimize disruptions to your operations. The program can be built in-house with the support of industry consultants, or look for the experience that spans both IT and OT network security design. As I said earlier, it is very important to embed the cybersecurity topic into companies' culture. And it starts by raising awareness at all levels, especially the C-suite level. Why? Simply because it requires an investment and it is a journey. There is no quick fix or solution when it comes to cybersecurity. And you may not have experienced a cyber attack before, but then why wait for it? I think the events of 2020, previous year, have accelerated the plans for digital transformation. The pandemic surely has turned the timetable of a lot of organizations in terms of digitalization initiatives. Ensure you bring together a team of right stakeholders, both IT and OT. Build cybersecurity awareness among your employees. Very important. Review your current policies and approach, taking into account a holistic vision. Invest wisely into technology enhancements like real-time threat detection. With the COVID situation right now, having a secure remote access. And review your current backup and recovery plans just in case you get into a cyber event. In this digital era, many organizations demand profitability of industrial facilities, and at the same time, they also demand the usage of technology from their employees to create and increase productivity as well as safety. The hyperconnectivity of those operational technologies, or OT, and the fact that industrial systems are becoming more connected, it also opens up the doors to new cyber risks and threats. Well, the good news is that it is possible to secure industrial networks without disrupting the daily operations and by using solutions that allow complete visibility of your network, your control traffic, and establishing the right security policies, you can implement an effective OT cybersecurity strategy that will not only protect your assets and all of your investments for the future. These are few steps that you may take into consideration when building your cybersecurity policies. I believe it is important to be proactive and to start building your cybersecurity roadmap now without any further delays. It is in the clear interest to enable growth, innovation, and agility of your business. We need to change our perspective when it comes to cybersecurity. It is definitely not a blocker, rather an enabler, and that brings in so many benefits of being connected to the outer world. With that, I'd like to conclude and thank you so much for listening to me. We value the time that you took out. If you surely have any more questions or queries around the various solutions that we bring forward to you from our connected services offering for cybersecurity, please type it in our chat box and we shall soon get back to you. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks again.
Hello everyone, it's a privilege to welcome you all to our Experience Center, a one-stop showcase of our legacy, our partnership, our capabilities and how we proceed to expand human possibility. Our ready capabilities are a direct response to your digital needs. Right since our inception, we have bet high on innovation. Let's start the tour. Digital transformation in the era of fourth industrial revolution is not an easy proposition, and it definitely does not come from a single source. What it requires is a blend of solutions. To speak more about it, I would like to invite my colleague Mr. Vivek Kumar Gupta, who will shed some light on our strategic alliances and its impact on our life science customer. Hi Vivek, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Okay.
Yeah, so as you rightly pointed out, our strategic alliance and partnership is something that we are very proud of, and that is something which basically helps us in our customers' journey for digital transformation. So like we can see over here, we have strategic alliance and partnership with AT&T and Microsoft on the IT layer, with Cisco on the security layer, and with E&H, Bandit and Fanuc on the OT layer. Also, we have our own partner network, which consists of our distributors and our SIs who have domain experts and who provide world-class support to our customers. The main benefit that the customers get is that each of these companies are industry expert in their own domain, they provide complementary solutions, and they are committed to open industry standards. Now let us just look at few of the customers who have been working with Rockwell and they have been able to achieve tangible benefits. So few of the examples that I would just like to share is, like we have an example of Dr. Reddy over here, who were able to reduce their time to qualify by 30%. One global pharma company, they were able to reduce their validation time from 2 weeks to 2 days. And one global equipment builder, they were able to provide a fully scalable solution. One biopharma company, they were able to reduce the time to installation and commissioning by 50%. One more company, they were able to get a lot of benefits out of getting solutions from Rockwell. GSK, they were able to reduce the conversion in 7 days. Okay. These were few of the examples of the customers who have been working with Rockwell. Now let us just look at few of the inputs that we have received from various consultants with respect to what are the trends in this industry. So a lot of drugs are going off patent and a lot of API is getting sourced from China. These are the business opportunities that can be there for Indian manufacturers. Also, one big challenge that they are facing is with respect to the counterfeit product and the increase in orphan drugs. Regulatory compliance is also a very important aspect that a lot of manufacturers are facing, and that is something that is becoming more and more relevant in these challenging times of COVID. There is a lot of unexplored market that is there in the world, like the Japanese pharma market, in which Indian companies' share is really quite less. So these are few of the areas of opportunities in which a lot of manufacturers can focus on and Rockwell can help them in basically providing a digital transformation solution by convergence of IT and OT. And the key three main pillars on which the solutions can be basically focused on is our DCS, our MES solution, and a virtualized infrastructure. Again, just looking into few of the customers who have been benefited and we have been working with them, few of the logos are mentioned here. So this is all that we had to share in this section.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you so much for your beautiful insights.
Thank you, Sutapa.
Let us now go to the section where all the manufacturing action happens and the data gets generated. Hi, so now I welcome you to this area where we have a discrete and a process application which will simulate and show you how exactly what we do in our technology domain. So to explain more about it, I would like to invite Mr. Vijay Bhatt to demonstrate us on our discrete application.
Hi, Stapa.
Hi Vijay, how are you?
I'm good.
So Vijay, let's start with the demonstration of ICT here.
Absolutely. So in this demonstration, what we have this is basically a pick and place arrangement which consists of three important parts. One is the ICT, which is called the independent card technology. Then we have a Robo Fano and we have a Terra table. So there are different loads which are being picked and placed from the conveyor onto the table and vice versa. In this ICT, we have a three-path system, path 1, 2 and 3, but we can have a multiple paths also created based on the system. This ICT actually is capable to carry a load from few kgs up to more than 5000 kgs and go from a current speed from 2 to 5 meters per second based on the design. One big advantage of this is that it has an anti-collision property. These vehicles would not collide with each other because each vehicle occupies a set number of coils based on the the speed, and when they move they keep a certain gap. If speed is more, occupied coils will be more. If speed is less, occupied coils will be lesser. So in that way there is no possibility that these two vehicles or multiple vehicles can collide with each other. We have actually put some load here which is called the payload actually. We have defined them as a black, blue and white here, which are being moved onto these different vehicles with the defined IDs. So what I'll do, let me start the process right from here. So the moment I give a start command, the pucks or the vehicles on the conveyor will start moving and robo arm will start picking them. So first of all these vehicles are being scanned by this sensor so that we see that they are based on their ID numbers, what is the load on them. And once the scanning process is complete, the robo arm will start picking each these loads and placed onto the Terra table. So once this process is complete, then the process will be reversed. So again the scanning process will begin at the turret and parts will be picked from Terra table and placed onto the conveyor, onto the base stations shown here. So this is all that we have in the pick and place, the arrangement.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for your wonderful insights on the ICT technology. So now we will move on to our process kit simulation. So now I welcome Mr. Vikas Atri to explain more about the simulation of our process kit in this process application. Hi
Hello.
Vikas, how are you?
I'm good.
So let's start with the demonstration of our process kit.
Yeah, so basically we are showcasing that how our distributed control system can be integrated with field devices like this process instrument. So first of all, let me open for ProMass 300 we have this process object. So basically process object, in this process object we have not only the main variable but also the other variables like the density and then the temperature and the kg per liter etc. and the totalizer value. Next we have also the process object for power components. Similarly, if I go to the standard motor object for direct online starter, we have the option of process object for overload relay, where we can measure the we can have the different electrical parameter like the full load ampere, percentage, current value, then the average current, line to line voltage, etc. And in the diagnostic, I can go to the different trip indication. In case of tripping, I can just monitor what are the reason of different trippings. Next, we have also installed vibration monitoring system on the agitator and the pump section. So let me just start the batch. So I will just select the recipe and I will start the batch, and then I can go to the agitator vibration, and then I can have the vibration data to monitor different alignment issues or any bearing issue that I can monitor from here. And then in the trend view, I have the vibration data that is being recorded that can be used for predictive analytics. So that is all for the process kit part, where we are showing the integration with different process object with these process devices. Thanks.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you for your wonderful insights on DCS simulation. So now we will move on to understand other technologies that are very important for our life science industry. Hi. So now let me welcome Mr. Anshu, who will walk us through various other technologies required in the life science industry. Hi Anshu, how are you?
I'm good. What about you?
I'm good. So let's start with the demonstration.
Sure. So we have utilized the concept of augmented reality to integrate and advance in biomanufacturing with novel solutions.
Okay.
So in this particular demonstration, we are using an AR application which can be installed on any iOS or Android based platform, right? And this particular application can be used to create visual awareness, wherein an operator can use this application to scan the machine, as you can see that, and he or she can monitor the critical process parameters of the system, and also can monitor the critical quality attributes. And so if there is any critical decision which needs to be taken right at the machine itself in a clean room environment in biomanufacturing, that can be easily taken.
So you mean a room where you can't enter, and a sanitation and cleanliness is utmost important. This could be a great use for it.
Exactly. So this can be a very useful concept for a clean room environment.
Thank you.
And so you can see that, I mean, this is not just giving you the the raw values or the live values of the system. This can also be utilized by the maintenance personnel to reduce the troubleshooting time, reduce the downtime of the system. So conditions like open wire conditions, power failure, or basically ambient temperature, to monitor the ambient temperature. Like in this case, we are monitoring the temperature of that particular instrument. So wherein the temperature is 25.4 degrees Celsius, just an example.
Yeah.
So this can be used for the maintenance activities as well. Now let me give you one more example or another use case which it can be used to ensure quick onboarding of a new operator. So a new operator can utilize this to quickly understand about the system. So as you can see, this in particular application there is a training manual. So all someone has to do is just click on that drop down menu, and the moment you click on that so the moment you click on that drop down menu, so you can see that different parts or components are already listed. So all you have to do is just click on that particular one, material tank 1. So there is an identification marker which is available at that particular material tank 1. So the operator needs to press that to confirm the understanding that he or she has understood that this is material tank 1. So in a way you can quickly ensure the onboarding of a new operator and reduce the training time.
Yeah, so for a large number of resources where the training high exhaustive amount is used for training, this could be a great use for the maintenance manager for onboarding the team.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
And this can just another use case. This can also be utilized to ensure quick setup of a new system, wherein there are multiple parts. And if you want to connect the system together or connect all the parts together, so this particular application can be utilized to make sure there are no mismatch in the parts assembly, and if you are doing something wrong, the application will guide you that what is the next procedure, what is the correct procedure. So this was a quick introduction about the concept of augmented reality. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is cybersecurity. So let me try to demonstrate the next technology, which is cybersecurity. So first of all, in case of in the journey of digital transformation, there is a very basic requirement, or there is a very basic fundamental which is required in case of IT/OT convergence, that is cybersecurity. And we believe at Rockwell Automation that there is no single concept or there is no specific technology which can ensure the complete cybersecurity in your setup. So it's basically a multi-layered approach, which we also refer it as defense in depth. Now let me try to demonstrate that what we have developed with our technological partner Cisco. So there is a dedicated security framework which we have developed, which is cybersecurity compliant. Now let me try to demonstrate that. So as I said, I mean, it's basically a multi-layered approach. So in this case, what happens is, so we have deployed security at multiple levels, wherein we have deployed security at the device level. Not just the device level, we have deployed security at the network layer as well. So you can see that we have technological tie-up with Cisco, wherein the Ethernet switches, the iOS or the OS belongs to Cisco. So all the devices, as you can see, the unused ports are administratively blocked or disabled. Now what happens if the hacker or a person tries to use a port which is live, which is working for any other device? So say if he removes one of the devices from the system and try to use that particular port which was working, so the moment he tries to plug his particular device, so again there will be a security breach notified over the HMI, or it can be initiated over a router or an alarm device. So the point is, I mean, in this case, the port security concept is applied with this particular device.
So I think this is a great requirement for all the organizations these days, with all the increased amount of security breaches that's happening. This is a great asset, right?
Right. So port security is one of the fundamental requirements these days in life science industry. So this was a quick introduction about the concept of cybersecurity. Now let's move on to the next topic.
So what would be our next topic for life science industry?
So let's move on to the next technology, which is our thin client technology.
Right. All right.
So let me try to demonstrate the next concept, the thin client technology, which is a very useful technology for life sciences environment. So as you can see that when it comes to this particular technology, it helps us to deliver the content securely, and the content can be delivered based on different users, based on different locations. And when I say different locations can be resolved using different aspects, like one of the easiest one is the QR code. Yeah. So, and the best part is this particular technology can be used for delivering the content on any zero client, thin client, or mobile devices like Android, iOS. So an iPad can be used with a particular application. Let me show you. So all I have to do is just install this particular application, ITMC, which is freely available, right? And then the moment I have this particular application, I just need to scan this ID. So the moment I scan this ID for this particular machine, I have the HMI available with me right at the iOS tablet itself. So I can operate this particular machine right from this tablet.
So will it have any kind of verification, validation for the kind of user that is going to use? Because this can be used by someone with a manager level access to a field force access.
Right. So the access can be restricted based on the user privileges, based on the defined personas. Say for example, a maintenance user would have a different kind of content. An operations or production guy can have a different kind of content. So based on the user privileges or restricted access, the content can be delivered on any client. Say for example, this is an HMI application. If I want to start or operate this, I can operate it right from this particular machine or tablet itself. So you can see that, I mean, the machine has started. So if I want to stop it, I can stop the machine right from the tablet itself. So this was one of the modes of using a location resolver as QR code and iPad tablet as a thin client. So now let me try to demonstrate the same technology with a zero client.
So Anshu, while we are at the zeroth client demonstration, would you like to explain to us what is the difference between thin client and zeroth client?
Yes. So a thin client can be any device, Android based or iOS based or even Windows based. You can use the application to install that particular client and it becomes a thin client, right? But it has a lighter firmware to run the embedded thin client application. Whereas in this case, a zero client, it doesn't have any OS. It doesn't even have any storage. So all the content is being transferred or delivered over the network via a centralized network server or a thin manager or other content delivery server.
All right.
Okay. So in this case, as you can see that, I mean, this is a zero client terminal we are using for a process kit application or a demo application. In this case, what happens, as I said previously, so if the content can be delivered based on a different user. So default application is the HMI for this particular machine. So if a user who is from a different section, from a packaging machine, for example, if he wants to access this particular, zero client to deliver his content, which is relevant to his profile or his particular machine, he can do that. So one of the another aspects, I mean, you can use is the access card, the RFID badge IDs. So the RFID access cards can be used to deliver the content. All he has to use is just tap in that access card, and the content for his particular packaging machine can be easily delivered. If he wants to reset the machine, and if he wants to start the machine, so using this terminal, which is for a different application, the operator of a packaging machine can start and stop the machine or operate the machine from this terminal as well.
Right. So that I think that's a huge cost that can have an advantage while using a zero client over a thin client,
right?
Based on the necessity and the need of the organization.
Right. So it brings up the flexibility. So I can stop the machine as well. So it brings the flexibility, the mobility to the system as well, and the ease of use. So it also reduces the IT footprint. So you don't need to have dedicated desktop terminals or the traditional desktop terminals. You can use the zero clients, and it also improves the the productivity by reducing the downtime. So as I said, I mean, there is no hard disk, no storage. So the replacement of this particular zero client can be done within 5 minutes.
That's
right.
Great. That's right.
So now let me try to demonstrate one more part. I mean, this was for the operations. Right? All he has to do is just tap in one more time, and the content which is originally delivered for this particular machine is again back to the screen.
Wow.
Similarly, if a person who is from a different persona, he is from a maintenance team, and if a maintenance guy wants to access the relevant content at this particular terminal, so all he has to do is just use the maintenance access card or his own access card and tap into that terminal, and you can see that the content which is relevant for that particular maintenance user is delivered over here, which is in this case is a engineering software. Not just the engineering software, the content can be anything. The content can be any any Windows based application. So let me show you. So the content can also be the drawings. So I mean, you don't have to rush back to the
I think it's a great use, if somebody is doing something at a site and he gets an emergency, he comes out and then he can finish up his drawing while he is monitoring.
Right.
So I think this particular zeroth client can be of great use to that individual and that responsible role as well.
Exactly. Again, I mean, the maintenance guy taps the card again, and the HMI application which is supposed to be delivered is back again.
And the security is also intact because it's with the RFID card.
Right. So this was again a quick introduction about the thin client technology using a zero client. Now let's move on to the next topic, or rather next section, where we are trying to demonstrate the command center, a typical command center using the thin client technology.
Sure, let's move. So now, Mr. Anshu, you will explain us how exactly thin client look like in a typical command center environment.
Right. So we have, as you can see, we have 4 zero clients over here, or we can call it thin clients. So in this case, what we have done, I mean, we have utilized station number 2 particularly to deliver multiple contents, right? So this is one of the benefits. I mean, how flexibly or how easily you can deliver the contents and you can change the content and for a particular station. So as you can see in zero client 2, station number 2, we have one application for HMI, which is typically used for predictive analytics, and another one is basically for another digital twin application, HMI. The another application can be in this case it is a diagnostic viewer application, which is basically used for monitoring all the health related information of all the devices. Similarly, when it comes to another application which is basically the engineering software that can also be deployed, right, for the HMI. Likewise, we have the analytics which is available or which provides us a quick dashboard about all the hardware which is connected to the setup, right. Likewise, within the same station number 2, we have also deployed the HMI application for our packaging machine. So similarly, I mean, this was just an example how easily you can have multiple applications within one zero client or thin client. So that was a quick introduction about the different technologies we have discussed so far.
Thank you, Mr. Anshu. Thank you so much for walking us through the important technologies that is there for life science industry.
Sure.
So while we are at the command center, let us walk through the DCS driven recipe execution system by Vikas Atri. Hi Vikas, how are you?
I'm good.
So let's go with the demo to understand the DCS driven recipe execution system.
Yeah, please have. Yeah, so this is basically an operator interface for recipe execution system, where basically we are showcasing that how we can integrate different sections of a manufacturing plant, like material management section, and then the weighing and dispensing section, and the different manual operation by the operator with the control system, and how it will result into a comprehensive electronic batch record. So first of all, operator will select the recipe from master recipe list. Then he will select the material code. Next he will enter the new batch ID name. Next he will enter the quantity parameter. Then the batch will be created and operator will start the batch. Once the batch is started, operator will be guided for operations like weighing and dispensing. Like in this case, operator is guided to place bin on the weigh scale for tearing. And then operator is asked to enter the actual material weight. Once the material weighing is done, then the barcode will be generated. Barcode will have the data like the actual material weight, material code, and the batch ID. Similarly, operator will be asked to weigh material B. Once weighing operation is done, then the raw material dosing will be completed. And then during the manual dosing phase, operator will be asked to scan the barcode for manual dosing. The scanned barcode data will have the information like the material weight and the material code and the batch ID, and then it will be compared with the barcode generated during the weighing operation, and the manual dosing will be only allowed once these two data is matched. Similarly, operator can be guided for different manual operation. Like in this case, operator is guided for a manual operation where he takes the sample from the premix and then send it to lab for pH testing, and then he entered the pH result. Operator have the facility to enter the comments, and then in the last, after the reaction, the operator can select the transfer path for transferring material from reactor to storage tank. Once the batch is created, then the electronic batch record is generated. Electronic batch record will have the data like batch ID and unique ID, recipe name, and the start time, end time, and then different unit procedures. Within the unit procedure, we have the different operation detail like the start time, end time of the operation, and then what are the different recipe parameters or reporting parameters. So batch record will record all the operator inputs and operator actions and barcode data and the data from the weighing scale. So hence a comprehensive electronic batch record is generated.
So this was an introduction regarding the DCS driven recipe execution system.
Thanks Vikas for this wonderful insight and wonderful walkthrough with this new system of recipe execution system.
Thanks, Vikas. Thanks.
Thank you everyone for being with us and showing your interest while we took you through our experience center. We hope to be your partner soon in the future. Please register on the QR below for a customized walkthrough. Thank you.